So today's topic is Maven Advanced, and next week we will talk about Nexus, and then we are going to move on to JIT. Okay, so let's move on to the presentation. Maven Advanced. The topics we are going to cover in this presentation include a multi-module project, grouping dependencies, and concept of profiles, and dependency management, and site generation. So let's talk about multi-module project, and this is probably the most popular form of Maven project in a reasonably good size application and project. So what is multi-module project? Multi-module project is kind of special Maven project in the sense that it does not produce any artifact, but is composed of several other projects called known as modules, and these modules are basically called child projects. So when you run Maven command on multi-module parent project, it will execute on all of its child projects. So if you have reasonably good sized project, you might want to divide them into multi-modules, and then you create a parent project, and only thing you have to do to build all of those child projects is running Maven command at multi-module parent project. And Maven figures out the correct execution order, looking into dependencies among those child projects, and it does even detect circular dependencies. So let's say you have 3 projects, and these projects have dependencies. For example, you have this traditional 3-tier architecture where you have a presentation layer and business layer and integration layer. And let's say presentation layer project has a dependency on business layer project, and business layer project has a dependency on integration layer project. And if you have to manually create each of these projects yourself, then it's your responsibility to make sure they are built in order. So for example, in order to build and compile and build your presentation project, you first need to compile business project because presentation project has a dependency on business project. And business layer project has a dependency on integration layer project, so that you have to be responsible for making sure integration project has to be compiled and built first before you build business layer project. So this is the sequence of control, that sequence of things you have to do yourself. So again, you go to integration project, and then you're going to compile, and then you go to business layer project, and then you compile it, and then you do presentation. So here you have to be responsible for making sure you are building Maven project in order that is reflecting the dependency. And of course, this is going to be very difficult if you happen to have many modules. In this case, you have only 3, so you might be able to manage yourself. But if you have, let's say, 100 of modules, and if all those 100 modules have some dependencies among themselves, and it's impossible for you to manage them in manual order like this. So what you want to do is, in this case, is using multi-module Maven project. So these are the steps that you are going to follow for creating multi-module Maven project. Okay. So you're going to structure these projects in a form of parent project and child project. And then you're going to write parent POM file, and then you're going to create child project directories, and then you're going to write child POM file. Now, in many cases, you might in fact have many modules that are already present, okay, So in that case, you might want to create a parent project on the top of those existing parent project. Okay. All right, so let's move on to step number 1. So this is the structure of parent project and child project. So this is your multi-module project representing parent project, and then this presentation project and business project and integration projects, they are child project. Okay. And the presentation project has a dependency on business, and business layer project has a dependency on integration, as we talked about. So these child projects are called modules. That's the reason we call this form of Maven project as a multi-module project. So step number 2, you're going to write a parent POM file. Again, these steps could be reversed. You might again have existing child projects, and then you're going to create a POM at the end, and then you're going to actually build a parent on the top of those. Okay, so these steps are not cast in concrete. So here, let's say we are writing parent POM file. So the parent POM file is, you can see the packaging of parent POM file says POM. Okay, so it's basically indicating that it's not really generating any concrete, tangible artifact like a jar or WAR file. Okay. And then the parent POM file should have these modules section in which each of these modules are specified. So here is specified presentation, business logic, and integration. Okay, so this is what parent POM file looks like. So important aspect is, again, the packaging has to be POM, and then it should have the modules. Okay, all right. Now you are going to create a child project directories. So typically, as a default, you want to create your child projects under the directory of a parent. So in this case, physical directory structure looks like this. My project is multi-module parent project. So this is the POM file that we just have seen. Okay, and then child modules and child projects are going to be inside the directory of this the parent project. So here we have business project, integration project, and presentation project, and each of those will have its own pom.xml file. Okay. By the way, just to make sure, suppose if you have existing child projects, and suppose if you want to actually maintain the same root directory, meaning you do not want to create another parent directory because your file system is structured that way, then what you can do is that you can have this parent POM file in the same directory of the child project. So instead of this directory structure, you might in fact actually create the my parent project the same level. Okay. In that case, what has to be done is that the parent project should have directory structure like a / presentation / business logic. So you can actually reflect the directory here. So here, as a default, it is actually indicating that this presentation layer is under the directory of this parent project. Okay, but they could be parent project, and the child project could be actually at the same level if you want to. This is a case as child projects are actually under the directory of parent project. And then we are going to create the child project POM file. So it looks pretty much the same as other POM, the regular pom.xml files. So we have group ID, artifact ID, and version and packaging. By the way, the group ID as a convention, you might want to actually use parent the project name, but that's not required. This is just a convention. Now, what is required is that you have to specify your parent. Okay, so you have a parent element here, and then you have to specify group ID and artifact ID of the parent. Okay. All right, that is pretty much it. And here, here you actually specify the dependencies on other modules. Okay, so if your child modules do not have any dependencies among themselves, you don't have to specify dependencies. But if there are dependencies, as in this example, then you have to specify the dependency like here. So in this case, what it's saying is that this particular project, this is the presentation project, has a dependency on business project. Okay, all right. Hopefully that is clear enough. Grouping dependency. Okay, so that is a multi-module project. Okay, all right. Let's move on to grouping dependencies. Actually, let's do the hands-on lab first. Okay. So you are going to import Maven project. And the exercise 1 is multi-module project, and exercise 2 is a grouping dependencies, and third is a profile. So we're gonna do just exercise 1. So in exercise 1, the pet clinic sample application is retrofitted to be a multi-module project. So here we have a 3 child project. So we have a pet clinic model. It basically contains some model classes, and pet clinic validator module contains a validator logic, validator class, and then we have a web app that contains the rest of the code, basically the web application that actually uses these 2 modules. Okay, so if you so you are going to actually see pet clinic parent module. So let's actually take a look at that. So we should have a 4 project. Okay, so these are 3 child project, and then we have a parent project, which is a multi-module parent project. So let's take a look at that. So this is the parent. Okay, so you can see we have a pom.xml file. Let's see the source level. So you can see the packaging of this parent project is POM, and then it contains 3 modules. Okay, pet clinic validator, pet clinic web app, and pet clinic model. Okay, so then each of these child project has its own pom.xml file. So in this case, it should have a parent element. Okay, and then it has its own artifact ID. Same thing with let's go to web app. So in this case, again, it has a parent and it has its own artifact ID, and then it has a dependency. So this web app application is a dependency on model project as well as a validator project. Okay, so now in order to build all these things, all you have to do is basically you go to your parent project and then you just build it. Okay, and then it will actually build all those child project. Okay, looking based on the dependencies. So it will actually build. If you actually take a look at the model, actually validator probably have a dependency on model project. Yeah, so it has a dependency in model project. So in this case, a Maven will figure that model project has to be built first, and then validator project has to be next, and then web app is going to be built last. Okay, so that is pretty much what you're going to see. And if you see the directory structure, you can actually see, if you actually go to this parent project, you're actually seeing this child project inside the physical directory of your parent. Okay, so we actually take a look at all this, and we just did a clean and build, and then we are going to run the server. So in this case, you are going to run web app project. Okay, and then it should work. Okay, and then you can actually change model, and then refresh the page, and you should actually see in this case, model has a Boston as a built-in default values. Okay. And you can also change the validator logic. And you can also even include your own validator logic. So that's actually something that you're going to actually do in this hands-on lab exercise 1. Okay. All right. Question: is it possible to have a parent, possible a project to have multiple parents? The answer is no. Okay, can Maven build the children projects in parallel if there are no dependencies between them? Yeah, that actually is an implementation issue. That is certainly possible. Okay. I don't think it's actually is building at the moment is in parallel, but again, that probably is actually maybe an implementation issue, and I don't see any reason why that cannot be done. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic: grouping dependencies. So grouping dependencies, if you have a set of dependencies which are logically grouped together, and if you have many projects that are actually using those group of dependencies, this is the case that you might in fact create a special dependency project. Okay, so here you're going to create a project with a POM packaging that groups these dependencies together. So let's think about usage scenario here. Let's say you are actually you're building an application that uses Hibernate, and it's highly likely Hibernate also uses other dependencies such as MySQL, or a bunch of other dependencies. Okay, and so you might in fact have other project that has these dependencies on this set of the projects. So you can actually group them into special project, and the goal of this project is to combine or group these dependencies. Okay, so we're gonna just call it maybe persistence depths, the project, and any project that require this common set of dependencies will just include that dependency on this project. Okay, so concept is pretty much the same. Very simple. Okay, so let's actually create a persistent depth project, and here, this is a genuine project, except that this actually packaging is again POM. Okay, and then it has a set of dependencies, common dependencies. So it has a dependency, in this case Hibernate, and Hibernate annotation, Spring Framework, and MySQL. And so this common set of dependencies are grouped into persistent depth project. Okay, so we just call it persistent depths. Now, the application projects that has a dependency to this set of common dependencies now can actually have a single dependency. Okay, so instead of having dependencies over and over with those large number of dependencies in the POM file of every project, what you can do is again you create that dependency project, and then here you are just have the dependency to that dependency project. So here, this is the group ID, and this is artifact ID, and this is again the project that we just created in previous slide. Again, you specify POM is actually type of POM. Okay, so this basically representing I'm depending on a project that has a set of common dependencies. Okay, so again, relatively straightforward concept. Okay, question: what is the advantage of having multi-module Maven project? Well, multi-module Maven project is basically dividing the project into more manageable pieces. Okay, you do not want to have a single giant monolithic project, because that could be actually rather difficult to manage. And besides, in many cases, you might in fact building a very large project, and then it does have a lot of sub-project, and each sub-project has to be managed and developed by different group, right? In that case, another example of you have to actually build a multi-module project. All right, so let's do the second hands-on lab, which is the grouping dependencies. So here we have Spring MVC dependencies project. Okay, so this Spring MVC dependency project, you just, by the way, you have to build it and install it first. Okay, so that the project has to be in the repository, whether in local repository or some repository, so that other project is able to use it. Okay, so you have to build this dependency project and install it in a repository. So that's the reason you have to say run as and Maven install. Okay, so as you can see, it is a packaging is POM, and then it has a bunch of dependencies, commons logging, pretty much all the dependencies that we need for Spring MVC application is going to be captured in the dependency project. Okay, all right, and then we are going to build now the application. So in this case, it is a dependency. It has just a single dependency of Spring MVC dependencies. Okay, and then you can just build and run the application. So your application project has a very simplified POM.xml file. Okay, so that is pretty much. Let's take a look at that. So yeah, so this is a Spring MVC dependency project, and again, if you see the POM.xml file, it does contain dependencies of pretty much all the dependencies that you need for building Spring project. Okay, so you have to install it. So you're gonna actually right click and select run as and Maven install. Okay, run as Maven install. And then here in this project, this is the application project that uses the dependencies. Okay, so here only thing you have to do is basically having a dependency on that project. So if you just run as install it, then it will create the project using the dependency project. Okay, and then you can run the application. Okay, moving forward. Profiles. So what is and why use profile? A profile is an alternative set of configuration values which is set or override default values. Okay, so the reason that you want to use profile is because you might want to customize a particular build for a particular environment, because different environment might require different configuration values. For example, production and development and test environment, they all require different configuration. For example, production environment will require the usage of production database, and while testing or development environment want to use a development or testing database, and they might want to actually use a different compiler version or something, or they might want to use a different properties and all that stuff. You can also customize a build depending on operating system or installed JDK version. Another example is like open source files. So in open source projects, so when you are, let's say, building open source project, you want the developer that is working with the open source project to be able to build your project regardless of operating system, regardless of the JDK version, and regardless of a build environment, right? So in that case, what could be done is that you could actually build a set of profiles that reflect many different types of, at least the common set of the build environment, and you are going to actually let the build to take that particular development environment or particular developer and actually build it. Okay, so that's another usage scenario of a profile. Okay, so how to create and use a profile. So profiles are configured in the pom.xml file, and each profile has an ID. And you can run a Maven project. You can actually build a Maven project specifying a particular profile either at the command line, or you can actually select one through what is called the activation. And this is probably a lot more common, of course. So let's take a look at how you can choose, how you can build and choose a particular profile. So let's say I'm actually building a profile. So you're going to actually include the set of profiles inside the profiles element. So here I define a single profile, and this profile has an ID called the production. And in this case, it's going to use the compiler plugin, and the configuration for the compilation is debug is false, because in production, you do not want to enable debugging. And optimize is true. So, for production environment, you want to actually set the optimization. And development environment, you might want to actually set this to be reverse. So in development environment, you want to set debug to true and optimize false. Okay. Now, in order to run a particular profile at the command line, what you do is you run your Maven command, and then you say -p, and then you provide ID of the profile ID. Okay. All right, so let's just do that. That is, in fact, the third exercise. So this is Hello World sample application that we built in a Maven 1 hands-on lab. So here we added three profiles. So we added a dev profile. For access for this exercise, we want to use a compiler version 1.5 for development. And for testing environment, we want to use 1.4. Okay. And for production environment, we want to use 1.6. Okay. Now, what you can do in this case is now you can actually run your Maven command. For this particular exercise, you want to actually do -x so that we can see what version of JDK is being used. So in this case, when you say Maven -x and compile, and then provide the profile ID, in this case -p test. Test is using version 1.4, right? Okay. So when you run it, you're going to see it's actually using 1.4. Okay. In this case, if you are using development profile, then it's going to use 1.5. Okay. So let's just quickly do that. Let me see. I'm going to actually go to this 2. And samples Maven hello world. Okay, so again, if you take a look at the pom.xml file, yeah, we have these profiles. Okay, so we're gonna actually say Maven -x compile, and let's say p, and let's try dev. Okay, now you can see it's using 1.5. Okay. So if I use test, it should use the 1.4. Okay, so it's using 1.4. All right, so this is the way that you can build the profile. The profile could be a lot more complex than what I just shown you. Okay. Now you can and then we actually run the Maven command at the command line using -p command. But it's a lot more common to activate it within the POM file itself rather than specifying -p option, of course. So this is the way that you can actually specify which one you want to use. Okay, so you can say activation by default. So suppose if you have multiple profiles, and one of them could actually include active by default to true. In that case, that profile, so when you actually run any Maven command, it will take a look at all the profiles, and it will choose one that contains this active by default set to true, and that profile will be actually used. Okay. You can also specify active profiles. Okay, and also you can also set the system property. So by specifying a particular system property, that property will be in fact picked up, and that will be used to select a profile. or you can actually specify JDK version as well. Okay, so let's take a look at each of these examples of it. So this is the case that I am actually specifying a particular profile. So this case profile is again is dev. Now this one contains activation, and inside the activation it has active by default set to, in this case, false. So this is not going to be chosen. So I should actually set this one true to make this example more relevant. So if this guy, if this particular profile's active by default set to true, then this profile will be actually chosen whenever you are running Maven command. Okay, so that's activation by default. Okay, you can also specify active profiles. Okay, so all as active profile, another active profile. In this case, both profiles will be executed. Okay. All right, you can also specify which one to choose through system property. So in this case, I can actually have a set of properties. Okay, so these are actually the Maven properties, not actually system properties. Okay, so here what you're saying is that whenever target environment property is set to dev. Okay, so you can actually certainly set Maven property at the command line or other means. And then this profile will be actually chosen, in this case env dev. Okay, now if you don't have this value, then the presence of this environment, this property will be enough to choose this particular profile. Okay, so if you have a multiple values for this target env, then you can actually set the values like this. All right, that is how you can use the system property. Okay, and through a JDK version, you can specify JDK 1.6 like this. So in this case, suppose you have a project, and the JDK 6 is the one that actually introduces the concept of scripting language. So if there is a module that contains a scripting language, the related class, then you do not want to build that particular module if you are running JDK 1.5, because JDK 1.5 doesn't support it, right? So in that case, what you can specify, you build a profile, which in this case we call JDK 1.6, and then it's going to activate only when JDK is used is 1.6. In this case, this particular module will be built only when JDK 1.6 is actually being used. Okay. All right, so now type of profiles. Now this profile information could be actually per project. In this case, you specify these profiles in pom.xml file. You can also have a per user based profiles. And you can also have a global profile. Okay, so in this case is actually the Maven installation in config setting.xml file, and this profile descriptor is not used in Maven 3.0, so let's not actually talk about it. Okay, so this profile information could be set in 3 different locations depending on the scope. Okay. Now you can actually find out which profiles are in fact available. So you can say Maven help active profiles, okay, and then it will give you all the places where profiles are active. So let's actually try this. So I'm going to say Maven help profiles. Oh, okay, so it has no active profiles because I didn't actually set any of those things in the active mode. Okay, if I change my pom.xml file to actually set any of those as active profile, then it will display one. Okay. So let's actually try that. I'm going to just say active by default to true. XML file. This one. malformed. Okay. Let's see, looks like active by default. Let's see, where it's supposed to go. Oh, I actually have activation. Okay, yeah. Activation. Activation. And activation. So my syntax is still not correct. Profile and oops. Profile ID activation. Okay, so it looks like I have to have profile ID activation. Oh, I have to have. Oh, that looks correct. Alright, so I'm not going to use this scheme. I'm going to use, let's try use this guy. Okay, so you are missing activation targets. Okay, let me actually try this. And let's say dev. Okay, alright, so hopefully, let's see whether this can actually help me a bit. Okay, I'm not having a good time on this one. Active profiles, active profiles. Yeah, looks like active profiles is not actually in the right place. Alright, so I'm gonna actually finish. I was in the process of actually creating hands-on lab of using active profiles, so that's something I'm gonna actually finish up in later on and actually update the hands-on lab. Alright, so let's actually move on. So this is a case that we actually talked about that. It's through JDK version. Yeah, okay, here we go. Alright, so let's move on to dependency management. So dependency management is that when you happen to have a lot of dependencies, but you want to actually have, the other project have a little bit of control in terms of versions. So that's the time that we are going to use a dependency management. Here again, I'm actually trying to add an exercise on this one to, so this is a parent project. We'll have a version like this, dependency of the version, and child project doesn't have to specify the version. Okay, so version control is done at the parent level rather than a child level. So that's a little bit of convenience. That's the dependency management. All right, site generation. So site plugin is used to generate a site for the project, and generate site also includes project reports that were configured in the POM file. So again, basically you can have a lot of different information to be generated through the site plugin. Okay, so you can actually do deploy, run, stage, and stage deploy. So this is again where Maven could be actually used for managing the deployment to a site. And you can also generate a lot of reports. For example, the issue tracking, licenses, mailing list, and project team, and source repository. These are all actually provided in the form of the plugins. Okay, so it's a matter of actually finding the right plugin and actually use it. So this is configuring reports. So in this case, Maven project info report plugin. I'm actually using that plugin to generate reports. All right, so that is the end of the Maven 2. Again, I'm actually in the process of, at the moment, the exercises of the profile. Yeah, we have seen very simple profile. I like to add a little more complex profile exercise, as well as dependencies and sites. Those exercises are still need to be added. All right, so that is the end of the presentation.